What are these people doing in my front room? Okay. My name's Nadiro. I'm a detective by inclination. In fact, I'm working on a case at the moment, checking out the situation. About 5:15 this morning, I get a phone call from a man in black. At least I think it's a phone call. I think it's the phone. What is this? Ah, wrong track. My name is Stan, and I'm going to talk a little about economics. Yeah. Any economists out there? Good, because you're not going to like this. So, a bit of housekeeping. I'm a mature student. Yes, I am. I'm not a lecturer. I dress up like one sometimes, and I thought it was a fancy dress tonight, and I was going through something of a crisis, I suppose. I needed a new change of direction. You know the way they say, if you always do the things you've done, you always get the things you got. I needed a change. I wanted to be a writer. So I'd got a couple of gigs, and that was all right. But I noticed that every job I went for, I needed a degree. So I thought, let's get a degree. I signed up for NUI Galway. I like Galway. And I didn't make the cut. But they said, you can have a BA or you can do a BA if you want. I said, yeah, okay. Here's 30 subjects, choose 3. It's like a kid in a toy shop, really. Philosophy, nice. Goes with the jazz. And it's the crux of all learning. And I thought, economics, we've just been through some kind of crazy economic meltdown. Be nice to know what the hell that was all about. And then I did a bit of computer science, because I thought that might come in handy, you know, a bit of coding. And being a mature student, it's a bit like that. There's a couple of young fish swimming along. There's an old fish, and he says, "Hello, boys. How's the water?" I say, "What the fuck is water?" You know. And did I just swear there? I suppose I must have done. Get a chair. I know it's stand up, but I'm a mature student. And so off we go. Off we go. Economics 101. Great. So we go through the history of economics, how back in the day, everybody, all the smart guys used to think about everything, politics, society, physics, and it was all jumbled in together. Mainly, just think white guys with beards. The slaves, not so much. And then somewhere between the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, economics got separated out. It wanted to be a science in its own right. And so it got all its equations and axioms and all the stuff that real science needs. And they took politics out of it. And this, I think, was the first mistake. Economics, in my opinion, is always and everywhere political. So anyway, we learnt that. And I disagreed vehemently, but I kept it to myself. And then we learnt the fundamental diagram. They call economics the queen of sciences, or the dismal sciences, the dismal queen of sciences, really. And they said it's all about the scarcity of resources, okay? And supply and demand. Okay, that sounds familiar. I think I can get my head around that. And there's a fundamental graph. We know what graphs are, we're all scientists, yeah. And so think of this graph. You've got, along the bottom row, you've got quantity. Up the side, you've got price. And when the price goes up, thinking about it from a consumer's point of view, when the price goes up, you buy less. That's how it works. So that's your demand curve. It's called a curve, but in fact it's a straight line. And so I wrote that bit down, you know. And so that was from the consumer's point of view. And then from the producer's point of view, when the price goes up, you want to produce more because you want to make more profit. So you got these two lines, a supply curve, which is a straight line, and a demand curve, which is also a straight line. And where they cross in the middle, this is where it gets interesting. That's equilibrium. Equilibrium, nice word. I think it comes from Greek or something, but it doesn't matter. And so equilibrium. And how do we get to equilibrium? Equilibrium. Let me take a run up at that. Equilibrium. That's it. And so how do you get to equilibrium? God almighty, that's a tough word. How do you get to equilibrium? I'll tell you how. And this is an idea from 1700 and something, from the book by Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, the founding text of economics. It's the invisible hand. Hang on a minute. Hang on. The invisible hand. This is the 21st century, goddamn. The invisible hand from a guy writing 200-300 years ago when they used to believe in stuff like that. Invisible. I'll put that to one side because that seems to me kind of not very good, you know. Come on, invisible hand. So I put that to one side, and it reminded me, I can remember thinking this right then, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Any Europeans in the audience? 1,000 miles is about 1,600 kilometres. And but if you're taking that step in the wrong direction, you're going to be 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometres away from really anywhere that's any use to anyone. So equilibrium. Alrighty, we'll run with that. So anyway, who's in this little diagram? Economic man. Economic man. That's interesting. No women in this. Nah. This is 17th century, for goodness sake. And Homo economicus, that's the technical term for it. And this is a guy that's, or I suppose it could be a woman, but think of it as a bloke. It's much easier that way. And this is someone that's rational, okay. Profit maximizing, okay. Autonomous, okay. And there's something else which I've forgotten. But I'm unpacking that. Rational. I look around me tonight and I think, is this rational? I don't think so. We'll put rationality in the box where equilibrium goes, and we'll come back to it later. And profit maximizing. Well, that sounds more like the bloke that's making the stuff than the bloke that's consuming it. When you're going to buy something, you don't think, how can I maximize my profit? No, you want to eat. And so profit maximizing, I think I'll put that in the box too. And what was the other one? Autonomous. Oh, yeah. How do you explain about fashion? Autonomous, everyone thinks for themselves? I don't think so. I think people are like sheep, really. But that's just me, you know. So I've got all these concepts that I've put in a box beside the bed, in fact. And when I can't sleep at night, I get them out. Equilibrium, rationality. Still doesn't make any sense. And I need to digress here because back in the 1960s, and I remember them because I wasn't there, and there's a bloke called Thomas Kuhn. He wrote this book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, okay? And in it, he described how science doesn't move in sort of incremental steps. What happens? You get handbrake turns. You get revolutions. And as an example, he gave Galileo. They used to think that the Earth went round the sun, or rather the sun went round the Earth. And they had equations, and when any anomalies arose, they just put another line in the equation. And they carried on putting new lines in the equation so that it would make sense. But eventually, Galileo, or one of those guys, Copernicus, he said, "I think, lad, you got this wrong. It's actually the Earth goes round the sun." So they strung him up. And, well, they had to. He was just really upsetting the apple cart. But the fact is, what he was doing was providing the truth. And it's my contention that economics is, as taught, not really much like the truth. Lovely diagrams, nothing wrong with the diagrams. They're all brilliant. You know, you sort of got your ISLM diagram. You don't need to know what that is because it's bullshit. And, you got all these diagrams and what have you. But as soon as you compare it to reality, it doesn't actually work. So I'm not going to go on too much longer because there's loads of this. And, I haven't even started on Karl Marx yet. And I think I will go on. No. And I haven't even mentioned money. And the funny... You'd think economics would be all about money, but we don't do that until the third year. And... there's no time in it or anything like that. It's just like snapshots, and that's how their equilibrium works. And what I've described up to now is microeconomics, and that's just like this one person basically going to the shops. And when they get to macroeconomics, which is on a bigger scale, they just multiply it. So you multiply a load of rubbish, you're going to get an even bigger load of rubbish, So there's a whole lot to this. There's interest, there's unemployment. Macroeconomics, one last point here. That was invented by a chap called John Maynard Keynes. And he noticed that if people didn't have enough money, they didn't buy anything. Brilliant. Bloody brilliant, eh? And he invented macroeconomics, and on it goes. It's still taught, but I'm sorry, I think it's all wrong. But I'm at the end of my degree now, so I just got to internalise all that stuff, get rationality out of that box, put it in my head for the exams, and then put it back in the box because it doesn't work. But I'm going to leave it there, and I'll finish with just the idea. Well, it's a joke actually. And how many economists it take to change a light bulb? I'll tell you. 7, plus or minus 10. My name's Stan, and thanks, you've been very rational.